Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Foundational concepts of narrative analysis in discourse analysis. Narrative analysis within discourse analysis provides a vital lens for understanding how narratives function as social and cultural tools. This approach delves into the structural components of narrative, such as plot, characters, and setting, and examines how these elements interplay to shape the narrative's impact on its audience. It also considers how narratives serve to organize experience, communicate values, and negotiate identity. By dissecting the elements and mechanisms of narrative construction, narrative analysis reveals deeper insights into the underlying cultural, ideological, and psychological processes that influence how stories are told, understood, and used in society. 1. Narrative structure in narrative discourse analysis. Narrative structure is a foundational concept in narrative discourse analysis, providing the framework through which stories are constructed and understood. The analysis of narrative structure involves dissecting how elements like plot, characters, and setting are used to build coherent stories that convey meaning and affect the audience. Understanding these elements is crucial for exploring how narratives function within cultural and social contexts. 1. Key elements of narrative structure. Plot. The plot refers to the sequence of events that unfold in a narrative. It is the backbone of the story, providing a logical progression from beginning to end. In narrative discourse analysis, the plot is examined to understand how events are selected, organized, and presented to achieve particular effects, such as building tension, eliciting emotions, or highlighting certain themes. Analysts explore how the arrangement of events influences the interpretation and impact of the narrative. Characters. Characters are central to narratives, serving as the agents through whom the story unfolds. In discourse analysis, characters are not just individuals in a story. They are constructs that carry cultural and ideological meanings. Analyzing characters involves looking at how they are described, their roles in the narrative, their relationships with other characters, and how they embody particular social identities or ideologies. This analysis helps reveal how narratives reinforce or challenge cultural stereotypes and social norms. Setting. The setting of a narrative encompasses the time and place where the story occurs. It sets the backdrop against which the events and interactions take place and can significantly influence the story's mood, themes, and characters' actions. In discourse analysis, settings are analyzed to understand how they contribute to the narrative's meaning and how they reflect or construct social and cultural contexts. Settings can also be symbolic, offering deeper insights into the narrative's underlying messages. 2. Analytical approaches. In analyzing these elements, several approaches are commonly used. Structural analysis. This approach focuses on how narratives are organized structurally, examining components like the narrative arc, introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, and how they contribute to the overall effectiveness and coherence of the story. Thematic analysis. This involves identifying and analyzing themes within narratives. Themes are the underlying topics or issues that a narrative addresses, such as love, betrayal, justice, or identity. By analyzing themes, researchers can uncover the moral or philosophical messages conveyed through the narrative and their relevance to cultural and social issues. Symbolic and metaphoric analysis. Narratives often use symbols and metaphors to convey meanings that are not explicitly stated. This analysis deciphers these symbols and metaphors to uncover deeper or hidden meanings within the narrative, revealing insights into the subconscious or ideological underpinnings of the narrative. Interactional analysis. This approach examines how narratives are constructed through interactions between speakers and listeners. It looks at how narratives are co-constructed in conversation, focusing on aspects like turn-taking, how listeners influence the shaping of narratives, and how narratives are used to negotiate identities and relationships in social interactions. The analysis of narrative structure in discourse analysis reveals how stories are not merely retellings of events but are carefully crafted instruments that reflect and shape human experience. By dissecting plot, characters, and setting, and employing various analytical approaches, researchers can uncover how narratives function to communicate cultural values, social norms, and personal identities. This deep dive into narrative structure enriches our understanding of discourse and highlights the power of stories in human communication and social interaction. 2. Coherence and cohesiveness in narrative discourse analysis. Coherence and cohesiveness are essential aspects of narrative discourse analysis, focusing on how narratives are constructed to make sense and maintain structural integrity as coherent wholes. These concepts are crucial for understanding how narratives manage to be persuasive, engaging, and meaningful within their respective contexts. By examining coherence and cohesiveness, analysts can delve into the deeper layers of narrative construction, exploring how narratives align with cultural logic and social practices to resonate with audiences. 1. Definitions and distinctions. Coherence refers to the logical flow and consistency of a narrative, making it understandable and meaningful to an audience. It is largely about how the narrative is perceived by its listeners or readers, ensuring that the sequence of events and the motivations of characters make sense within the world of the narrative. Cohesiveness, on the other hand, relates more directly to the linguistic and structural elements that hold a narrative together. This includes the use of connectives, transitions, and other linguistic markers that link parts of the narrative to create a seamless story. 2. Analyzing coherence. Coherence in a narrative is not merely about the chronological order of events but also about the internal logic and believability of the narrative within its cultural and social context. Narrative coherence can be analyzed through several lenses. Causal and logical connections. This involves examining how events are linked causally and logically. A coherent narrative typically shows a clear cause-effect relationship that guides the audience through the narrative, making actions and outcomes understandable. Consistency of character and setting. Characters and settings should behave in ways that are consistent with the narrative's depiction of them. Changes in character behavior or setting details that contradict earlier descriptions can disrupt narrative coherence. Theme and motif reinforcement. Coherence is also maintained when themes or motifs are introduced and developed in ways that support the overall message or moral of the story. This repetition and development of themes help to unify the narrative and make it coherent. 3. Analyzing cohesiveness. Cohesiveness in narrative discourse analysis looks at the textual and linguistic elements that knit the narrative together. This includes lexical cohesion, the use of repeated terms, synonyms, and related words that help to link different parts of the narrative together. Grammatical cohesion, the employment of grammatical devices such as conjunctions, ellipsis, and substitution which ensure that sentences and clauses are connected smoothly. Referential cohesion, the consistent use of pronouns and other referents that maintain clarity about which characters or objects are being discussed throughout the narrative. Sequential cohesion, the organization of narrative components in a way that makes the sequence of events easy to follow. This might involve the use of flashbacks or foreshadowing that, while potentially complicating the chronological flow, enhance the narrative's thematic and emotional development. Understanding coherence and cohesiveness in narrative discourse analysis is fundamental to assessing how narratives function within their cultural and social environments. These elements are not just about making a story work on a structural level but also about ensuring it resonates and connects with an audience on a deeper, more engaging level. By analyzing how narratives are constructed to be both coherent and cohesive, researchers can uncover the techniques and strategies used by narrators to make their stories compelling and effective within discursive practices. This insight is invaluable for anyone looking to understand or utilize the power of narrative in any communicative context. 3. Temporal and spatial organization in narrative discourse analysis. Temporal and spatial organization are foundational concepts in narrative discourse analysis, addressing how narratives structure and manipulate time and space to shape meaning and engage audiences. Both elements are integral to the construction of narratives, influencing how events are perceived, interpreted, and valued by audiences. 1. Temporal organization. Temporal organization refers to how time is structured and represented within a narrative. Narratives can manipulate time in various ways to create specific effects or convey particular messages. Key aspects include chronology and sequence. Most narratives have a foundational chronology, whether linear or nonlinear. A linear sequence follows the order of events as they happened in time, which can lend a sense of realism and continuity. Nonlinear narratives might use flashbacks, flash-forwards, or anachronic structures, which can serve to reveal character motivations, build suspense, or create a thematic resonance. Pacing and duration. The pacing of a narrative refers to how quickly the story progresses, while duration concerns the length of time that events are perceived to take within the narrative. Manipulating pacing and duration can affect the tension and emotional impact of the narrative. For example, slowing down the narrative during a crucial scene can increase its intensity. Temporal framing and markers. Narratives use temporal markers, such as the next day, last year, or during the war, to frame the action in time, helping to orient the audience. Temporal framing can also be thematic, as when historical periods are used to reflect broader social comments or connections. 2. Spatial organization. Spatial organization in narratives deals with how space is constructed and used to support the storytelling. This includes settings. The locations where narrative events occur are not merely backdrops but active elements that contribute to the mood, themes, and character development. Settings can symbolize emotional states, societal structures, or thematic ideas. The description of settings, how characters interact with them, and their changes over time can significantly influence how the story is perceived. Spatial relationships and movement. The arrangement of spaces and the movement of characters within and between these spaces can drive the narrative forward and shape its meaning. Spatial relationships can highlight distinctions between characters, such as social or emotional distance, or contribute to plot development, such as the journey in a quest narrative. Metaphorical space. Space in narratives can also be metaphorical, representing more abstract concepts like emotional states or relationships. For example, a character moving from a dark room into a sunlit garden might symbolize a transition from despair to hope. 3. Analytical approaches. When analyzing temporal and spatial organization, narrative analysts often consider narrative impact. How do temporal and spatial organizations affect the narrative's impact or audience's emotional response? How do they contribute to building suspense, developing characters, or enhancing thematic depth? Cultural and social contexts. How are time and space used to reflect or critique cultural and social realities? For example, how might a narrative set in a dystopian future comment on current societal fears or hopes? Symbolic interpretations. What symbolic meanings are attached to certain times or places within the narrative? How do these contribute to a deeper understanding of the text? In narrative discourse analysis, understanding how narratives organize time and space is crucial for unpacking how stories function and affect audiences. These elements are not just technical aspects of narrative craft but are deeply intertwined with how narratives make meaning and articulate human experiences within cultural and social contexts. Analyzing these dimensions allows researchers to gain insights into the narrative's purpose, its cultural significance, and its power to influence perception and thought. Conclusion. Narrative analysis is a crucial aspect of discourse analysis, offering profound insights into the ways narratives shape and are shaped by social and cultural contexts. By analyzing narrative structures, researchers can uncover how stories construct identities, convey values, and influence perceptions. This analysis not only enhances our understanding of how narratives function within different cultures and communities but also highlights the power of storytelling in shaping social realities. The foundational concepts of narrative structure, coherence, cohesiveness, and the organization of time and space are essential for exploring the depth and breadth of narratives. These concepts allow researchers to approach narratives not just as mere stories but as complex, dynamic instruments of social communication and cultural expression. Through narrative analysis, we gain a more nuanced appreciation of how narratives work to organize human experience and mediate our interactions with the world. Frequently asked questions. What is the importance of narrative structure in narrative discourse analysis? Narrative structure is crucial in narrative discourse analysis as it provides the framework through which stories are constructed and understood. Analyzing narrative structure, such as plot, characters, and setting, helps uncover how narratives function within cultural and social contexts, revealing insights into the meanings conveyed and the impact on the audience. How is plot analyzed in narrative discourse analysis? In narrative discourse analysis, The plot is examined to understand how events are selected, organized, and presented to achieve specific effects, such as eliciting emotions or highlighting themes. Analysts explore how the arrangement of events influences the interpretation and overall impact of the narrative. What role do characters play in narratives within discourse analysis? Characters in narratives serve as agents through whom the story unfolds and are analyzed to see how they carry cultural and ideological meanings. This involves looking at how characters are described, their roles, relationships, and how they embody or challenge cultural stereotypes and social norms. Why is setting significant in narrative analysis? The setting provides the backdrop against which narrative events and interactions take place, significantly influencing the mood, themes, and actions of characters. Analyzing the setting helps understand how it contributes to the narrative's meaning and reflects or constructs social and cultural contexts. What is coherence in narrative discourse analysis? Coherence refers to the logical flow and consistency of a narrative, ensuring that it is understandable and meaningful to an audience. It involves the internal logic and believability of the narrative within its cultural and social context, focusing on causal and logical connections, consistency of character and setting, and theme reinforcement. How is cohesiveness achieved in narratives? Cohesiveness relates to the linguistic and structural elements that hold a narrative together, such as the use of connectives, transitions, and other linguistic markers. These elements link parts of the narrative to create a seamless story, ensuring that it is structurally integrated and fluid. What is the significance of temporal organization in narratives? Temporal organization involves how time is structured within a narrative, influencing how events are perceived and interpreted. It includes the manipulation of chronology, pacing, duration, and the use of temporal framing and markers to create specific narrative effects and convey messages. How does spatial organization affect narratives? Spatial organization pertains to how space is constructed and used within a narrative. It includes the settings where events occur, spatial relationships and movements of characters, and metaphorical spaces that symbolize broader concepts. Spatial organization supports storytelling by contributing to mood, themes, and character development. What analytical approaches are used to study narrative structure? Common analytical approaches include structural analysis, thematic analysis, symbolic and metaphoric analysis, and interactional analysis. These methodologies help dissect various elements of narrative structure, from plot and character development to the use of language and interaction patterns. Why are coherence and cohesiveness important in narrative analysis? Coherence and cohesiveness are essential for making narratives persuasive, engaging, and meaningful. They ensure that narratives are constructed in a way that resonates with audiences, aligning with cultural logic and social practices, and maintaining structural integrity as coherent wholes.